The moment my brother-in-law grabbed my wrist, the chatter and clinking glasses of my sister's rehearsal dinner went completely silent in my head. Not because the room quieted down. It didn't. People were still laughing, still refilling their wine, still pretending everything was fine. It went silent in my head because every nerve in my body shifted into a register I hadn't used in almost 3 years, and my brain did what it was trained to do. Assess, calculate, decide. Nobody expects a federal air marshal to be sitting at the kids' end of the table eating shrimp cocktail. That's kind of the point. My name is Reese. I'm 31 years old. For the past 6 years, I've worked for the TSA's Federal Air Marshal Service, and before that, I spent 2 years with a private security contractor doing risk assessment for corporate executives traveling through West Africa and Southeast Asia. I have a degree in criminal justice from Virginia Commonwealth University and a shelf in my apartment with 3 commendations on it that I never talk about, because the job teaches you early that the people who talk about their commendations are usually the ones who don't have many. My family knows I work something with airports. My mother tells people I'm a flight attendant because it's easier and because the truth makes her nervous. My father, God rest him, knew exactly what I did and thought it was the best thing he'd ever heard. He passed 2 years ago and left a hole in every room I walk into. My sister Aubrey is getting married. Was getting married, I mean. The wedding was this past Saturday at a venue outside of Charlottesville, Virginia. One of those converted equestrian estates with white fences and string lights and a caterer who charges extra for the cake cutting. Aubrey is 27 and she's been with her fiancé, now husband, for 4 years. I like him fine. His name is Marcus. Wait, no, his name is Fletcher. I keep almost saying Marcus because that's my supervisor's name and they have the same hairline. Fletcher is a project manager at a commercial real estate firm. He talks about interest rates the way some men talk about football. And he has never once in the 6 years I've known him said a single thing that made me uncomfortable. His brother, though. His brother is a different story entirely. His brother's name is Corbin. He's 24 years old, 6'2", recently separated from the Army after one tour and a non-judicial punishment that nobody in his family talks about in specifics. He had been drinking since before I arrived at the rehearsal dinner, which started at 7. I got there at 7:15. By the time I sat down, his eyes already had that glassy confidence that alcohol gives men who are already a little too confident to begin with. I noticed him the way I notice everyone, quickly, quietly, and then I filed him under monitor and went to hug my sister. The evening went fine for a while. Aubrey looked beautiful. Fletcher's parents were warm and a little nervous in that endearing way of people who really want their son's wedding to go well. My mother had already cried twice, which is a personal record even for her. I sat between my aunt and Fletcher's teenage nephew, a 14-year-old named Owen. No, wait. His name was, I'll call him the kid, Fletcher's nephew. Quiet boy, a little awkward, the kind of kid who is clearly smarter than most of the adults in the room and has learned to hide it so people don't get weird about it. We talked about the video game he was playing. I told him I'd never heard of it. He explained the entire lore to me with the patience of someone who has given up expecting adults to keep up. I liked him immediately. Corbin drifted over to our end of the table somewhere around the second course. He didn't come to talk to the kid, exactly. He came to perform. There's a type of drunk that needs an audience, and when the audience at the adult end of the table stops being satisfying, they migrate to whoever seems most captive. The kid was captive. I was apparently invisible. "You still playing those baby games?" Corbin said, leaning over the kid's shoulder too close, using the voice men use when they want to sound like they're joking, but they're also not joking. The kid's shoulders went up, that small animal instinct of shrinking when a threat gets near. He said something quiet about it not being a baby game. Sounds like a baby game. Corbin grabbed the kid's phone off the table, just picked it up, and held it out of reach when the kid went to take it back. You should be doing something real. You know, when I was your age, Corbin. I said it the way you say someone's name when you want them to understand that you're paying attention. Not loud, not rude. Just, I see you. He looked at me like I'd materialized from thin air. Up until that moment, I think I had genuinely been furniture to him. Relax, he said. We're just messing around. I looked at the kid. The kid was not messing around. His jaw was tight and he was staring at the tablecloth. Give him the phone back, I said. Something shifted in Corbin's face. That moment when a man decides whether he's going to back down or double down, and you can see it happen in real time, like a weather system forming. He handed the phone back to the kid, but then he pulled a chair out and sat down right next to me. Not across from me, next to me, close enough that I could smell the bourbon on him. What do you do? He said. The classic opener. The one that's not really a question, it's a setup for whatever he's about to say about what he does. I work for the federal government, I said. Doing what? Transportation security. He laughed. Not a real laugh. The kind with a point at the end of it. What, like TSA? You check people's bags? Something like that. My buddy works TSA, he said. It's not exactly. He waved his hand like he was looking for the polite word and then didn't bother finding it. You know, high stakes. Sure, I said. He took that as encouragement. They always do. He leaned back in his chair with the posture of a man who has just confirmed his priors and started talking about his tour. Some of it was real. You can tell when people are describing something they actually lived through versus something they're embellishing for effect. And the first 10% of what he said had the texture of truth. Then it became something else. He talked about combat situations with an ease that felt performed, and he started using his hands, and he glanced around to see who was listening. I ate my salad. At some point, Fletcher's mom came over to ask the kid something about where he was sitting during the ceremony tomorrow, and while she had his attention, Corbin turned back to me. You work out? He said. I told him yes. What do you do? I told him I ran and did some grappling. He thought that was funny. Grappling, he repeated, the way people repeat words they think are pretentious, like wrestling, Brazilian jiu-jitsu, mostly. Some Krav. He looked at me, really looked at me, up and down, the way that is meant to communicate I am evaluating your physical body and finding it insufficient, and smiled. I could probably take you, he said. It wasn't serious. Or it was serious in the way that things get said at rehearsal dinners after 5 drinks. The words are real, but there's a social agreement in place that nobody acts on them. I said something non-committal and turned back to my food. Then the kid knocked over his water glass. Accident. Just nerves, I think. He'd been rigid the whole time Corbin was near him, and when Fletcher's mom turned away, the tension in him relaxed too fast, and his elbow caught the glass. Water went everywhere, including onto Corbin's sleeve. What the? Corbin grabbed the kid's arm. Not gently. He grabbed it the way people grab things when they're startled and angry and the alcohol has dissolved whatever filter usually exists between impulse and action. His fingers were around the kid's forearm and the kid made a sound. Small, surprised, involuntary. And every calculation I had been running in the background of my brain for the past 2 hours reached a conclusion. I put my hand on Corbin's wrist, not to hurt him, not yet, just to apply enough pressure to certain tendons that his grip loosened. He let go of the kid's arm. The kid pulled back and I looked at him and said very quietly, "Can you go check on Aubrey for me?" He went. Good kid. Corbin looked down at my hand on his wrist, then up at my face. The hell are you doing? He said. You're done for tonight, I said. Excuse me? I let go of his wrist. Stood up. I'm 5'6" on a good day, and he had about 7 inches on me, and I want to be clear that I was not worried. I want to be clear that I was the calmest person at that table, possibly in that room at that specific moment, because this is what the training does. It doesn't make you angry. It doesn't make you afraid. It makes you functional. It makes the math very simple. You put your hands on him, I said. We're going to go get some air, and you're going to drink a glass of water, or I'm going to call the venue security, and we're going to have a different conversation. He laughed. Actual, contemptuous, this is the funniest thing I've heard all night laughter. You're going to call security, he said. That's what I said. He stepped toward me. Not all the way, not a full commitment, just the kind of step that's meant to see what I do. What I did was nothing. I didn't step back. I didn't change my expression. I just stood there and let him recalibrate against the fact that I wasn't moving. You know what your problem is, he said, the voice going low and ugly the way it does when the performance is over. Women like you think because you did a little. He reached out and grabbed my upper arm. I don't fully remember deciding to do what I did next. That's the honest truth, and it will sound like false modesty, but it isn't. When you train something into muscle memory, the decision-making moves out of the conscious mind and into somewhere else, somewhere faster. His hand came toward my arm, and my body responded before my brain fully caught up. I turned into him instead of away. Stepped inside his reach, which is the last thing he expected. My right hand came up and redirected his grabbing arm across his own body, using his own momentum. My left hand went to the back of his neck, not violent, just a guide, just enough. And I walked him forward and down in one controlled motion until his face was about 6 inches from the table. He was bent at the waist, arm twisted up behind him, completely off balance. I wasn't hurting him. I could have been hurting him. The point wasn't to hurt him. The point was to demonstrate in very physical terms that the parameters of this interaction had changed. Okay, I said, quietly, close to his ear so only he could hear. The arm that's free right now, don't use it. You'll regret it, and I'm not saying that to be tough. I'm saying it because this is a rehearsal dinner and I would prefer not to have to explain paperwork on my sister's wedding weekend. I became aware of that the way you become aware of weather, gradually and then all at once. I let him go, stepped back, straightened my dress. Corbin stood up slowly. His face was the color of a stop sign. He looked at me, and then he looked at the 20 or so people who were staring at us. And then he picked up his jacket from the chair and walked out of the room without saying a single word. The silence lasted about 3 more seconds. Then Fletcher's mother said, very faintly, "Well." My mother was already headed toward me with the expression she gets when she's been scared and is about to express it as anger. "Reese, Reese." "What on earth?" He grabbed the kid. "Mom." He was playing around. He wasn't. I said it flat and certain because I had been watching him for 2 hours, and I knew the difference, and I needed her to understand that I knew the difference. He grabbed a 14-year-old and he put his hands on me. I handled it. "You handled it?" "You." "Reese, that's Fletcher's brother. The wedding is tomorrow." "I know when the wedding is." My aunt had appeared at my mother's elbow. She touched my mother's arm and said something quiet, and my mother pressed her lips together and looked away. I went to find the kid. He was in the hallway outside the banquet room, sitting on a little decorative bench under a mirror, his long legs folded up awkward. He looked up when I came out. "You okay?" I said. He thought about it seriously, the way kids do when you ask them real questions and they can tell you mean it. "Yeah," he said. "Did you actually just—" "Don't make it into a thing," I said. "Are you hurt?" He shook his head. He looked at his forearm where Corbin had grabbed him, almost absently, and then back up at me. "How did you do that?" "Years of training and a lot of early mornings. What do you actually do? For work?" "I keep people safe on airplanes," I said, which is the simplified version, but it's not untrue. He looked at me for a long moment with that particular look teenagers get when an adult has surprised them and they're recalibrating. "Cool," he said. And somehow from a 14-year-old who'd spent most of dinner rolling his eyes at everything, that landed like something real. Aubrey found me about 10 minutes later. I braced for the impact. My sister is a peacekeeper by nature, allergic to conflict, the kind of person who apologizes when someone bumps into her. I expected her to be upset. I expected to spend the next hour managing her feelings about her rehearsal dinner being disrupted. Instead, she put her arms around me and held on. "I saw what happened," she said into my shoulder. "I saw him grab Owen. I mean the kid. I saw him grab the kid before you stepped in. That's okay," I said. "It's not okay." She pulled back and looked at me with her eyes bright and fierce. "He's been like that all night. Fletcher's parents have been stressed about him all week. There have been problems." She said that last part carefully, the way you say things that cover a larger story. "Fletcher already talked to his parents and they're going to make sure he leaves. And Reese." She took my face in both hands the way she used to when we were little, when she was 4 and I was 2, and she was already trying to take care of everyone. "I know what you did and I know why you did it. Thank you." I didn't cry. I don't usually cry. But I held on to my sister for a minute longer than I needed to. Fletcher found me near the end of the evening. He looked mortified in that specific way of good men who are embarrassed by the behavior of people they share DNA with. He apologized twice before I told him to stop. I asked him if his brother had gotten home okay, and he said yes, their father had driven him. I asked him if there was going to be a problem at the wedding tomorrow. Fletcher straightened a little. "No," he said. "He's not coming." Good. The next morning, I called the county sheriff's non-emergency line. Not because I wanted to make trouble. I want to be clear about that. I had no interest in making Aubrey's wedding day into a police matter. But because the kid had visible bruising on his forearm, and he was 14 years old, and I have a professional obligation that doesn't clock out when I take off my work ID. I explained what I had witnessed. I gave my name and my credentials. I gave Corbin's name and his recent military separation status. The officer I spoke to was professional and thorough and told me they would follow up. I don't know exactly what happens next with that. I know that a report exists now. I know that if something similar happens in the future, there's a record. That matters. It may not feel like enough, but it's more than nothing, which is what silence would have been. The wedding itself was exactly as beautiful as Aubrey had planned every detail for it to be. The venue was gold in the afternoon light. My mother cried 5 more times. The kid was in the front row during the ceremony, and when I caught his eye, he gave me this tiny nod, like we had a shared understanding now about how the world works and who's allowed to touch you and what happens when someone forgets that rule. I walked Aubrey down the aisle. Dad would have done it. Obviously, he would have been the one to do it, and his absence was a presence unto itself, a shape in the space beside her. But when she asked me to do it, 2 weeks after he died, I said yes without hesitating. I wore the dress she picked, blush with a structured bodice that she chose for me, specifically because, she said, it hides the shoulder holster situation. I told her I don't wear a holster to weddings. She told me she didn't want to know. At the reception, Fletcher's mother found me at the bar. She's a small woman, precise in the way of someone who has managed a household and 2 sons, and probably a lot of private difficulty with grace for many years. She stood next to me and ordered a glass of white wine, and then she looked at me sideways. "I want you to know," she said carefully, "that what you did last night was not something I would have been able to do, and that I am grateful someone did it." I didn't know what to say to that exactly, so I said thank you. "Corbin has been," she paused, chose a concern, "for some time. His father and I have been trying to address it properly. Last night was," she pressed her lips together. "It was not the first incident. We're getting him proper help, real help, not just a conversation." I nodded. That was what I needed to hear. Not an apology for him, not an excuse, just evidence that someone who loved him was taking it seriously. "He was in a hard place over there," she said, quieter. "I don't say that to excuse it." "I know," I said. And I did know. I had worked close enough to veterans in difficult transitions to understand that the road back from certain kinds of service is not always a straight line. I also knew that understanding someone's pain doesn't mean accepting what they do with it. She raised her glass. I raised mine. "Your father must have been very proud," she said. I had to look away for a second. Out at the dance floor, where Aubrey was laughing at something Fletcher had whispered to her, her whole face lit up. "He was," I said. "Yeah, he really was." Later that night, after the cake and the toasts and the last song, I sat outside on the stone steps of the venue with my heels off and my feet in the grass. The Virginia night was warm and full of frogs, and somewhere in the distance there was a bonfire that guests had migrated to. The kid came and sat on the step next to me. Still in his dress shirt with the tie loosened the way teenage boys always loosen their ties the minute they think no one's watching. "Can I ask you something?" he said. "Sure. Do you ever get scared? Like, in your job?" I thought about it honestly. "Yes," I said, "sometimes. But mostly after, not during. During, there isn't really room for it." He considered that. "That's kind of like gaming, actually," he said. "Like when you're in the middle of it, you're not scared. After you die, you're like, oh, that was terrifying." I laughed. A real one. "Don't tell anyone I said that was a good analogy," I said. "Too late," he said. "I'm absolutely telling Aubrey." We sat there in the quiet for a little while. The frogs kept singing. The bonfire light was orange and distant through the trees. My father believed I was capable of things before I believed it myself. He drove me to my first jiu-jitsu class when I was 17, sat in a folding chair in the corner of the gym, and watched me get tossed around for an hour. And when it was over, he said, "You're going to be very good at this. Not you might be. Not if you work hard." He said you're going to be, like it was simply a fact he was already acquainted with. I didn't fully understand until recently what it costs to be the person who shows up when everyone else freezes. Not money. Not even time. It costs a certain willingness to be misread, to be called aggressive or cold or someone who overreacted by people who were too frozen to act themselves. My mother called me the next morning to apologize. She said she'd been scared, and it came out as anger, and she was sorry. I told her it was okay. It was. Because here's the thing about being underestimated. It's only ever a problem for the person doing the underestimating. I know what I'm capable of. I knew it on that rehearsal dinner patio in Charlottesville, in my blush bridesmaid dress with my bare feet in the grass. I knew it every morning at 5 a.m., on the mat, getting up after being put down again and again and again, until getting up became the automatic thing, and staying down became the impossible thing. The strongest person in that room on Friday night was me. I didn't need anyone to say it. I already knew.